So I'm going to play you Ben Shapiro, who's a Zionist, his video called Gazan Civilians Are Not Innocent. And when I play this video, I'm going to display the double standards and the hypocrisy and watch how I use his logic against him. Let's continue.
Again, the lie that Gazan civilians are entirely disconnected from Hamas. This does not mean, by the way, that Israel should target civilians. They're not. Again, the lie that Gazan civilians are entirely disconnected from Hamas. This does not mean, by the way, that Israel should target civilians. They're not. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't attempt to minimize civilian casualties, which they are. This is why they're pushing people south toward where the electricity and water are still running. By the way, shops are still open in southern Gaza. Well, what it does mean is that this lie that basically it's a few people at the top who are the problem, and the rest of the population, they are just Western liberals. So we can either import them into the West or we can force Israel to make concessions that ends with a Palestinian state. Because after all, aren't we all the same underneath? It's a lie. It's not true. For example, this is video from the Gaza, the Hamas attack from Gaza on the Israeli Moshavim. These areas have killed 1,500 Jews. And this video, you're going to see a lot of civilians. It turns out it was not just card-carrying members of Hamas, heavily armed and uniformed. It turns out it was a crap load of civilians. Here's some of the video. Here are people walking around by the open border Gaza Fest. These are all the Gazan civilians. They look like civilians. These are members of Hamas and civilians who are riding on their trucks. People celebrating next to members of Hamas. Civilians, some of whom are on crutches, going into Jewish areas to steal things. So many civilians, people riding bikes, kids' bikes, directly out of the Jewish areas, stealing things. These are all of the uninvolved Gazan civilians. Again, this sort of attempt to create a hard ideological distinction between the Gazan population and Hamas is ridiculous. The idea that, again, there's an ideological distinction that can be made such that Israel must make concessions. And that's really what needs to happen here. And again, that the West should accept hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees, for example. That's going to work out well for the United States or for Europe. That's ridiculous. By the way, while we are trying to get...
So according to Shapiro, there are no innocent people in Gaza because those innocent people you see randomly walking in the street, they actually support Hamas. Therefore, they are no longer innocent and they should be killed because they look like everyday citizens and civilians, but they're no longer innocent citizens and civilians because they support and cheer for those rockets. Well, Mr. Shapiro, Hamas can make the same argument against Israel and Israelis. So let's look at this video. In this video, you'll see everyday citizens who support genocide against the Palestinian people. These people that you see in this video look like some of the people who probably even attend the music festival at Nova. Let's have a look.
להעיף אותם לארצות הערביות האחרות, השכנות, ולעשות שם תומור.
מה לדעתך צריך לעשות בעזה עכשיו?
לפזר את כל התושבים שנמצאים בעזה, באיו"ש, כך שלא יהיה שלטון ריבוני ששמו עזה.
לעשות שם לונה פארק, ולעשות שם עיר חדשה.
אין מה לעשות, צריך לגרש אותם.
לשטח אותם ולחזור לגוש קטיף.
פרק את אמא שלהם.
למחוק אותה.
להעיף אותם לארצות הערביות האחרות, השכנות,
Oh, look, they don't look like soldiers. They just look like everyday citizens. They're very innocent. So Hamas would say, these, you claim that they're innocent, but look how they want to eradicate and exterminate the Muslims, the Arabs in Gaza.
לעשות שם טומורלנד 2024, לארח את הארצות.
So now, according to Mr. Ben Shapiro's logic, there are no innocents. So when Hamas sends those rockets and goes into the music festival and starts killing those people, that means they're not really innocent because they're probably the same people who actually support the extermination of the Arabs. All right, so in this next video, we can see some Israelis chanting death to Arabs. They look like, youths, innocent people, members of the public, people who go to the Nova Music Festival, chanting death to Arabs. Let's listen. I mean, these are the areas that Hamas fires rockets. So is Miss Ben Shapiro going to be consistent and say, oh, well, these Israelis are no longer civilians anymore because they are chanting death to Arabs? So is this legitimate targets for Hamas? I mean, you say that the IDF has legitimate targets to those civilians, those Arabs, because they're not really civilians, they're not really innocent, because they actually cheer for Hamas, they cheer for the rockets, they cheer for the death of destruction of Israelis. So then why aren't you being consistent here? Because you have everyday citizens in Israel who are chanting death. I mean, these aren't soldiers. I don't see them in uniform. They're just everyday citizens. Let's listen to more innocent civilians in Israel. Let's see what they think about the Arabs.
The Jews came here, they took this land, and this is our land now, and I don't think there should be here no Arabs. Like Arabs, they won, we gave them Gaza, they should go live there quietly. If they want, they should go back to Iraq, I don't know, to wherever they want.
I'm seeing that we need to... איך אומרים להעיף את הערבים? כן, כן, תגידי לי את המילה הזאת.
I don't think there's any answer to it. Really? There's only one way, I would carpet bomb them.
You would carpet bomb them?
It's the only way you could deal with it.
Oh, look, Mr. Shapiro, he's a innocent civilian. He's an Israeli, but he wants to carpet bomb the Arabs, the Muslims, the Palestinians. He wants to carpet bomb them. This is your everyday citizen, your civilian wants to carpet bomb the Muslims, the Palestinians.
Or try to stop them a different way. It never worked.
I think that we're miserable. The Arabs make a פיגועים and we need to kill Arabs.
I mean, Shapiro, how old is this girl? Is she 19, 20, 21? She looks like one of those girls who probably attend the Nova Music Festival. She wants to kill all the Arabs. She says we need to kill Arabs, and she even laughs about it.
I think another thing that the Jews should have rights to hate them. I think we have the right to hate them. I don't see a reason why not. I wouldn't trust any of them.
Notice he didn't say he doesn't trust Hamas. He says he doesn't trust any of them. So you get the gist, fellas. You can see that everyday citizens in Israel want to kill and exterminate the Arabs. But if Hamas targeted them, or forget Hamas, put Hamas away. Suppose another organization came and started throwing rockets indiscriminately into Tel Aviv or southern Israel and started killing these people, Ben Shapiro will say, oh, look, they're terrorists. They started killing our civilians, despite showing that their so-called civilians actually support the murder of Arabs. But on the other hand, Mr. Shapiro wants us to accept that the people, the Arabs, the people of Gaza, they are not innocent because they support the resistance. They support rockets being fired into southern Israel. So when it comes to Arabs, Palestinians, they're terrorists because they support a regime that fights against Israel. But Israelis they're still innocent despite supporting a regime that tries to kill Arabs. Doesn't make sense, does it? In fact, Shapiro sounds just as bad as the Hamas leaders, because a Hamas leader actually said in 2023, Hamas stormed the Nova Music Festival in Israel, killing 260 people. Hamas spokesperson said they are not classified as innocent civilians because they are the same people who support Israel by saying, "I stand with Israel." They are the ones who stole my land and occupied it, burning the city of Hawara, sitting around the borders, working on cyber and artificial intelligence to control and besiege my people. So you've got a Hamas leader now justifying, saying that all of those people who went to the Nova Festival, the music festival, they're not really innocent. They're the same people who say, we support Israel, we stand with Israel, right? They work on cyber to besiege the Muslims, besiege the Arabs. So the Hamas leader is saying these aren't innocent. You know, they actually support the barbarism. And then on the other side, you have Shapiro doing exactly the same thing. He points fingers at the Palestinian Arabs and he says, they're not really innocent. They're the same ones that cheer for the Hamas rockets. And guys, this argument didn't start with Ben Shapiro. Americans also use this argument to justify and kill the Japanese citizens. In 1945, the United States nuked the Japanese. An estimated 140,000 Japanese are killed. According to many Westerners, the Japanese civilians are not innocent because they supported the tyrannical government of Japan. Therefore, it was justifiable to nuke men, women, and children and the elderly. And in fact, the Westerners say them killing and nuking a whole city is justifiable. It actually ended the war. Yes, there were many civilians that got killed, but the end result is decades and decades of war ended. Now, imagine Hamas had a nuclear warhead, dropped it on Tel Aviv, completely destroyed it, and then justified it and said, it's okay to kill all these civilians because we just ended a 75-year war between us and Israel. Of course, they'll call Hamas a terrorist organization or any resistant group a terrorist organization for dropping a nuke on Tel Aviv, but America is not a terrorist organization for dropping a nuke on Japan, intentionally targeting a civilian population. I mean, I can go on and on with these double standards. Again, folks, I'm not justifying, I didn't make this video to justify killing civilians. In fact, in my religion, you can't kill civilians. You can't target. The Prophet ﷺ disproved, in a hadith, he disproved the targeting of women and children. This is in an authentic hadith, Sunan Abu Dawood. Just in case someone says, oh, you are just an apologist for terrorism. And they do this to cancel you. It's part of their cancel culture. No, this video isn't made to support the killing of civilians. This video is made to show the hypocrisy of Ben Shapiro, because when he makes such stupid arguments saying that, oh, everyday citizens in Palestine are not really innocent because they cheer for the rockets, then he needs to be consistent, because Hamas could make the very same argument against your people, the Jews in Israel, who are looking to be innocent, where in reality, deep down, they all have motives to kill Arabs. But of course, if they get killed in a rocket attack, Shapiro would start bitching and whining and saying, oh, they killed our innocent people. But he would never say, oh, well, they're not really innocent because they're part of the war against Arabs and they're really with the Israeli government and the Israeli army and they support this war. No, he wouldn't do that because he's too much of a coward to actually be consistent. With that said, thank you for listening. Please subscribe and share. We'll continue to debunk this coward.